Is anything, though, realistically going to change as a result of her visit?
You're probably going to see more moves from the United States on pushing to restrict some of that. Some of that can be, moderate tariffs. Some of that can be export controls. But I mean, this is telegraphing to the Chinese that the Americans don't want surprises. In other words, they don't want the Chinese finding out that the U.S. is taking an initiative against them on CNN. And that's important. The reality is, yeah, this is not going to be the easiest of trips. But 6 months ago, they weren't taking trips at all. And what we've had is a flurry of high-level meetings from Commerce, from Gina Raimondo. We've had, the Secretary of Treasury now going twice. Jake Sullivan has spent literally days with his counterpart in countries all over the world. And of course, Biden just had a phone call for a couple of hours with Xi Jinping this week. Those are all important to help stabilize what is a pretty confrontational relationship.
What role is Janet Yellen playing in the cast of characters here in this administration? Because this will be followed, Ian, by a trip by Anthony Blinken. Is this the good cop role that she's playing right now? How would you describe it?
It's on this issue, there's not a lot of good cop, bad cop. I think everyone is on the same page. That's not true in a lot of other areas of policy, but here it is. Nobody wants the United States to get into a big sudden fight with China. Everyone recognizes the Chinese can be very challenging to deal with. The U.S. doesn't want to give away the store, but also that they're trying to have pretty consistent engagement. They don't want confrontation that isn't necessary confrontation. So the only place they want to hit them is areas where the U.S. believes that its national interests are truly at stake. And of course, there are areas for more cooperation in the context of all of that. Fentanyl, you've seen climate coordination, you've seen a bunch of others. But it's not like they're really bad cop and good cop. I mean, like if Blinken is talking to his counterpart, or Jake is, or Janet are, it's not like the Chinese are not, and I've spoken with a lot of high-level Chinese officials in the past weeks, it's not like they're saying, oh, we really like it when policymaker X come to Beijing, but we don't like that one. That's not the case here. Yeah.
Well, obviously, Ian, the U.S. faces great difficulty in navigating the relationship with what is an adversary, but we are seeing the U.S. now having difficulty navigating a relationship with an ally, namely Israel. We know that President Biden spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu today, warning about that U.S. policy around Gaza could change if the administration doesn't see changes it would like to see from Israel in regard to protecting civilians and humanitarian aid. The question, though, is what realistically can change about U.S. policy. And we posed that question to Jonathan Panikoff of the Atlantic Council yesterday. Just listen, Ian, if you will, to what he told us.
The U.S. leverage when it comes to Israel is big ticket items that have fundamentally underpinned the U.S.-Israel relationship for years now. So it is major defense hardware like the F-15s that we're talking about being sold, major bombs, intelligence sharing. It's not going 0 to 25 if you condition the sale of arms with Israel. It's going 0 to 60. You'd be fundamentally changing the relationship.
Ian, do you think the Biden administration is willing to go 0 to 60?
I think that's an overstatement. But I do think that what we heard today, the readout from Biden's conversation with Netanyahu, is a change. Before, what we had was a red line that if the Israeli war cabinet, if the prime minister decided to order an invasion, a ground invasion of Rafah, where 1.5 million Palestinians are sheltering, without finding a way to get them out and humanitarian aid in, that was a red line, and the United States would take action against Israel, action well beyond allowing a Security Council resolution to pass, which the U.S. did last week. Today, we heard something different. Today, we actually heard if Israel does not proactively change their policy of damage to civilians, the willingness to do more, significantly more, to protect Palestinian civilians with the ongoing bombing campaign, and significantly more to get humanitarian aid in, then the United States policy is going to change. And that will include a slowdown or a suspension of some military systems. That's a big deal. It is a dangerous thing for Biden to do because Netanyahu can become a much more significant direct adversary and use his connections in the Republican Party, maybe Trump himself, and certainly some Democrats too, against Biden. But that was the policy that was stated in the readout today. That is new.
Yeah. So what's more likely, Ian, when lawmakers return next week? Conditions tied to Israeli funding or Ukraine funding is at last passed by this Congress?
I think Ukraine funding is almost finished at this point. Meaning it's going to happen. Yeah. $60 billion. It's very clear that Speaker Johnson is trying to wrap this up in a way that is acceptable to his sort of Republican base. And yeah, he's taking a little bit of a risk with his speakership, but he is prepared to do that. Biden feels comfortable on this. Republicans and senators and Democrats in the Senate feel comfortable about this. And the Europeans, who were panicking a few weeks ago, they feel like this is going to go through. So, I mean, look, the Ukrainians are on borrowed time right now. They are pushing to get a new number of Ukrainians sent to the front lines, mobilized. That is passing now. They're going to take the age from 27 to 25, which is necessary and overdue, frankly. But they're also going to get more support from the United States. I feel pretty strongly about that.